So now you're creating some tremendous efficiencies, and each plant can create 1.2 million pounds of raw biomaterials per day, and there's no need to be drying the biomass. What's going to be available to scale? You know, if we have the American Gravitas Impact Project, and it's creating 12,000 jobs in the state of Florida, and we're going to be building campuses in opportunity zones that will greatly affect people looking for green, sustainable jobs. And it's really exciting, but what does that entail? Does it entail, it really, you have to build the infrastructure. And there's been huge incentives for the petroleum industry to build billions and billions of dollars worth of infrastructure, and they've been tremendously incentivized to do that.
With no taxes. Didn't they get a tax break since 2014?
Yeah, they're now, all of a sudden, you have a plant that was made illegal in the 30s, and people are looking at it like it's still 1930s, where we have all these technologies to really reintroduce an alternative to putrefied carbon that's 400 million years old to fresh carbon that's, green and organic.
Okay, I don't know what, I feel like sometimes I get stuck in high level conversations and I say things and people are like, why would that matter to me? Right? Like, what's the importance of the putrefied carbon compared to fresh carbon? And teach me a little bit. Why are you in this? What's the...
Yeah, exactly. Well, the Earth is a phenomenal record keeper for species that have failed to adapt.
Okay.
And we find it in carbon in the ground. And ultimately it comes up in this form. But we have new carbon, fresh carbon, essentially hemp, that can be grown. But you don't want to create a situation like with corn, creating ethanol, where you're just ruining the soil, degrading the soil with huge, vast monocropping of corn to create ethanol. Whereas in this, we're not using any soil. That the American Gravitas Impact Project, is hydroponic. And so we're creating high density biofactories that can filter millions of gallons of essentially bad water a day. There's a lot of runoff from Lake Okeechobee. We can filter and bioremediate that water through our hydroponics. But the biggest input of a hydroponics grow is the biggest input cost is electricity. And so where do you source the great low cost electricity? Is through a pyrolysis technology that you can essentially cook plastic waste into a crappy fuel. And ultimately that can be used as energy to power our biofacilities. But that has the impact of creating heat and CO2. You don't want that going out in the atmosphere because that's kind of counterproductive. But we can sequester both of those in the use for the high density bio facilities that allow a plant to grow to maturity in 30 days. So now you're creating some tremendous efficiencies, and we're creating our each plant can create 1.2 million pounds of raw biomaterials per day, and there's no need to be drying the biomass. So a lot of the infrastructure out there right now is counting on huge facilities to dry this biomass, and everyone's growing Christmas trees, clipping away these gorgeous little things. Well, we're high density. We are growing biomass. And we have 1,100 molecules within that self-assemble. And we can process that green, and we have 3 buckets that come off. You get a fiber bucket, which is, plastics. Mm-hmm. It also can be food fillers, it can be paper, and it can be textiles. You have the Under Armour material and the Nike sports material that doesn't degrade and it's clogging the landfills. Well, you can essentially create hemp silk from that type of fiber as well, because we're cellulosic microfibers. So that's a very valuable output. And then waters that come off, that can be used for hemp juice, but it can be processed into ethanol at industrial scale. And we don't need to, and it's, food and farmer grade, food and fuel grade, ethanol. But the oils that come off is the 3rd bucket. That has all the cannabinoids, all the terpenes, all the flavonoids, because there's no high heat, there's no high temperatures that actually, kill those things, destroy those molecules. And so we have a number of outputs to the highest bidder. And in addition to that, we're capturing megatons of carbon out of the atmosphere. So we could give all of the biomaterials away and still be profitable with the credits from capturing the carbon. It was one of the most efficient forms of capturing carbon. But ultimately, we're for profit. And we will, provide high value biomaterials to that are clean, green, and good for humanity and good for the planet. But we'll also be kind of a carbon sink for capturing carbon, all while filtering, millions of gallons of water a day before it can enter our oceans and our waterways.
It's incredible. What's the size? I know that I think you said this earlier. What's the size of your facility, and are you guys operating right now? Where are you in this process?
Well, we did get sidetracked by the COVID situation. We were about to go into our initial facility in March. That got sidetracked, but we really keep sharpening the saw. We're all kind of the team that is behind Gravitas is have built multi-billion-dollar companies before, multi-$100 million capex and opex budgets that they've managed, so it's a pretty seasoned team behind it. But ultimately, we are working with an investment bank in New York that has signed on with us to distribute. They have 64,000 institutional clients around the world, and they need shovel-ready impact investments that are ready to go. And we really fit the sweet spot where sustainability and profitability meet. So we're doing it through a convertible high-yield bond that converts in 5 years. So how that works is, an accredited investor can participate with a bond subscription. They're $25,000 minimums, but ultimately that is a 12% coupon paid annually for 5 years. And after 5 years, you get to choose: has the execution happened? Is this all working out? And if that has, our execution has executed, the participants can say, hey, I'd like to convert to equity into the company at 2 times face value. So you get a double bonus of getting in at the value at that time. So it creates an internal rate of return of about 24%, a year over 5 years. It's a great return on a bond.
Yeah.
It's in the merger in kind of the PE space, it's called like loan to own.
Okay. Talk to me real quick about sustainability. When we talk about the sustainability, what was the aha moment for you that really bought in that something has to change, and why around hemp? Like, what help me understand what sustainability. When I talk to people, really, I mean, unless they've been directly impacted or unless it hits their pain point, and trying to figure out everyone's pain point, understanding hemp is in every facet of our lives, right? Talk to me about, what's your aha moment and why?
Well, I've had a lot of aha moments. You know, I keep learning. I'm keeping, I'm sharpening the saw every day. We came to become a B Corp, which is essentially, to benefit all stakeholders more than just the shareholders. We're not about just making rich people richer. We're talking about making humanity richer. And we did we got a preliminary B impact score. And companies like Patagonia, Dannon Yogurt, some large companies have committed to become B Corps. The average B Corp score is 87. The world's highest B Corp score is 124. And we got our preliminary B score at 224. So, so we're like over the top, and it gets better. So we realized, wow, we really have something here. But we went further on because the United Nations several years ago introduced the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs. People in America don't even know what these things are. Most of them. Because we see the UN, it's like, oh, we know the UN, but there's conspiracy theories out there that it's just a cabal that's just going to, enslave humanity. But ultimately, there's 190 countries that all kind of subscribe to try to make humanity better, and they created these sustainability goals. There's 17 of them, and we did our full action manager assessment of our SDG impact. And we got a score of 96.8%. And the benchmark average for American companies is 37%.
Oh, that's embarrassing.
Yeah, it's embarrassing, but it gets even more embarrassing when you look at things like sustainable infrastructure, circular economies, climate impact. We are really not,
it's a different ballgame.
We're not unified in any kind of. I think we're very busy at, fighting things as Americans. We're fighting wars, whether it be a tax or war against drugs or illiteracy, is leaving people not unable to read, and
Right.
It seems like when you go to war against something, you create more of what you're going to war against.
Right.
And so we need to maybe create a war on love to create more of it. Or there seems to be some sort of collective consciousness that needs to come together for us to all realize that we're all humans, and we have all been collectively a part of a crime against humanity, against the planet and nature. And that has a lot to do with David Attenborough's recent release on Netflix. And I highly suggest everybody watch it.
That's what you just posted about the plastics.
Yeah, and that that we do have an effect as a filmmaker. David Attenborough, he was like 90 or something. He looked like he's seen it all. He's seen the changes that have happened, and he realizes that these are man-made changes, and it is a crime we have committed collectively as a species, and we need to kind of look to solving these problems. And there's a lot of money out there. I'm looking at BlackRock, and I've been to the Bloomberg Green Conference, the Climate Bonds Initiative conference, really some thought leaders around the world are really coming together to realize, we need to create more circular economies. We need to have less waste, and we need to support businesses that can create the raw materials for the next stages of modern civilization. And that's ultimately what Gravitas does.
So you said something earlier, the circular, what'd you say, circular economy?
Circular economies, yeah.
For a long time, this is how our indigenous people and our tribes have run their groups, right? And their economies is everything is in-house. We as Americans have gone to outsourcing everything, and everything's made cheaper and faster. And I went just recently looking to buy a camp trailer, and I was blown away at how cheaply made new trailers are, where old trailers are cheap and they're heavy, but they're solid surface counters, real wood, they're nice, they last, right? So yeah, I think even more, this is becoming more and more impactful when I talk about how do we as a United States sustain during this economic downturn.
Yeah,
right?
Well, I think we're coming to realize we've been using the environment as our trash can for long enough. And we have some serious problems that need to be, infrastructure needs to be built to address these things. It's not just like, oh, I'm gonna, create 3 buckets in my kitchen and say, this is plastic and this is, compostable and this is trash, because ultimately America only recycles less than 7% of all the plastic. So even though you think you're recycling and you're putting it in the recycling bin, it's going in the landfill. Okay,
so I've heard recently, and I'm sure that countries, and I don't want to speak wrong, so I'm not even going to mention, but say over in the Middle East, are no longer taking other countries' plastics to recycle?
Correct. Well, we were shipping our plastics to China.
Okay.
They refused to take our plastics now. Now we're looking for these barges full of plastic trash floating around the ocean, and looking for a place to put it. Philippines, I believe, said no recently. So everyone's like, not in my backyard.
Well, it's not just us that were cut off, right?
We're cut off.
Other small countries also that we're dependent upon China to recycle, and now we have this abundance even more so.
That's essentially what Gravitas can do as we scale as a global solution. We take in plastic waste and crappy water, and we turn it into clean, green, organic biomaterials that we can make, clothing, paper, plastic, essentially everything, food fillers for modern civilization, not only here, but around the world. The world's choking on dirty water and plastic waste. And, we can essentially, do quite a lot for humanity. But ultimately, one campus of our campus model is $600 million. That's not a check that people are looking to write every day.
How many do you assume we'll need? Say the United States.
Well, one campus, we have plans for 6 just in Florida. And that would essentially be able to take the plastic waste situation for Florida, and that would mitigate the plastic waste of Florida.
Why'd you pick Florida?
We live here.
Okay.
And it's great. I lived in Naples. I've been in the hedge fund industry for 20 years. Okay. I got a little bit disenchanted making rich people richer, and with very little gratitude. And I think converting and pivoting towards sustainability, and working with groups that have large, globally scalable plans was really drew my interest. So that's why I'm the director of ESG and sustainability for Gravitas. But I can't take credit for it because we're a team of just brilliant, amazing people that are, my friends now. And we just, we talk and communicate constantly all the time. And we've got some really great partners that have come around from their engineering, design teams, a lot of different amazing robotics people, and this is all automated. So we're still creating very high paying, like 6-figure green jobs.
Okay, so tell me about how many jobs your facility, each facility will create. You said most of it's automated. So how many people are actually working within a facility, but not including how many new industries this opens?
Yeah, it creates a lot of new industries, and this is just primary jobs. The secondary jobs around it are probably pretty even more so.
Right.
I think each one, I'd have to look at my notes, but it was like $200 million of economic impact annually. I think that might be just from plant one. I mean, plant one at 75 million generates $200 to $250 million a year in revenues. So that's substantial. As far as the jobs it creates, we have like biomaterials labs that go with that. We need to have applied materials to actually, like, my job has been to educate, and you've been sharing some information back and forth on LinkedIn. Yeah. And my job is essentially to spread awareness that there is a solution to these problems. And every day I'm like, oh, hey, this is happening here, and we're aligning ourselves with, the United Nations, B Corps, there's a few other organizations that we're becoming more involved in, but we've got some great backing from institutional groups that want to provide a series of municipal bonds to investors following our first plant one. So that would be a really large, a great sign for America, where after plant one, we become more of like just an institutional allocation. Right now, our cost of money is high. 12% coupon bond is a high bond. Most people don't hear about a 12% coupon bond. They get to choose between 0.5% and 1.25% at a bank on a CD or something, which is just almost insulting to people that have saved money for their entire lives, thinking oh, I'm all set now. I'm just going to put my money in the bank, and everyone's being rewarded for speculation. And now the Federal Reserve is basically running America like a hedge fund. So it just doesn't seem sustainable. We need to create real infrastructure that creates real things, not these intangibles. And that's what the valuation of most of the stock market rise that you see are all based on intangibles. And those can go away. That's like vaporware.
Right.
So there's a huge tail risk in this, Fed-induced cheap money to prop up companies and bail out companies. I didn't see too many, plenty of executives still got to go vacation in the Hamptons over the summer because they got bailouts, and it reflected in money going right to the stock market. Where Main Street, everyone got hammered. They don't even know where they're getting their food from. And you have rich people online just saying how awesome America's doing. And you're like, how could you say that? You're like, America's great. And then America can't feed themselves,
Right. We went from like this divide to this divide.
Yeah. There's a little, disingenuous to say we're doing fantastic. Life at the club is great. But, you go to the food line and it's larger than it's ever been, down the street, around the block, going a quarter mile or so. I mean, I even see, the food lines in Naples, Florida, was one of the wealthiest places in America, with people lined up in their cars, zigzagging around to get food.
Yeah.
You know, that's not a recovery.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're just at the beginning, right? This is what makes me so sick. And the part that bothers me is, how do we fix it, right? And what can I do to contribute? And the more I know, the more sick to my stomach I get about this labor trap. You know, I've become really passionate about textiles in all of this. Mm-hmm. Before I was like, I don't care where I get my clothes. I had no idea. In my mind, I'm embarrassed to admit this right now, but in my mind, I thought all my clothes were cut and pressed on a machine. Mm-hmm. I didn't realize there are still people sewing and cutting and trimming and perfecting everything we wear, whether we buy it at Walmart for $1 or at the thrift store, or we buy it at the high-end, malls. And what's different is who's doing the work, right? And the amount of sweat labor and the way the people are treated, and the fact that
I've been there. I've been to the labor to basically textiles. Well, some backstory on me. You see the picture over my shoulder right there. I rescued my son, who was abducted by his mother, to Bangladesh. And I went and did, full Liam Neeson, rescue mission, found him and snuck out of the country. Oh, and I met some phenomenal people that had helped me rescue him, because they knew it was the right thing to do. We've been put down this path that, Muslim people are evil. We created this war against this religious war. It's ridiculous. And Muslims there's some good people that are Muslims. You can't just say there's some freak shows that are Christian, there are freak shows that are Muslim, and some, freak show Sikhs out there too. You can't just say blanket statements. When I did go over there, I really got to meet some phenomenal people that went out of their way, that had nothing to gain really to help me, but they went out of their way to do everything they could to help me get my son out of there. And part of that tour, I got to tour a garment factory. One of the people that had helped me rescue my son owned several. And he, was saying, how he treats them very humanely, has clinics there and doctors for them all to see each other. But you'd still, I'd walk through, I'm 6'4", and, very light complexion. People were looking at me like I was from another planet. They're like, oh my God, look who is here, and as I'm walking around, my heart went out to them, because I could see they were just making, jeans. They're essentially making jeans for Europe.
Cut and sew.
Yeah, and just sewing and cranking away. And that's what they do. They do their little thing, and then boom, next. And it's like an industrial line. Very, it made me sad, but ultimately they needed the employment, because there's no other, $1 a day is kind of like what, billions of people live on around the world. I think the Hunger Games might be more of a documentary than a some fictional film, because you've got people around the world starving to death, and we're throwing away so much food. It doesn't make any sense. So from the circular economy standpoint, we need to think better about how we can distribute foods, how grocery stores can be more effective at providing food to people. There's so many opportunities that we can take advantage of in the future. Gravitas is a large industrial infrastructure play, but there are a lot of solutions out there that can be implemented. Hemp is a phenomenal, crop that's coming back. But the problem with it is that you don't have processing. You had $6.5 billion of hemp that rotted in the fields last year. You probably had more that rotted or burned in the fields this year. The real choke point, though, was processing. You had farmers, committing suicide because they're like, I did everything right. I grew great hemp, but I didn't have any buyers. The processors couldn't process my stuff. And so we created a real kind of modular processing technology that scales. So, and without the need of drying. So that was the critical choke point. But then we're like, well, we're solving one choke point.
To create another one.
But then we're thinking, well, we need to think bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Yeah. And now we have the American Gravitas Impact Project, where each facility gets rid of 45,000 tons of plastic waste a year, filters 13 million gallons of water, captures 282 tons of carbon, and makes 1.2 million pounds of raw materials.
So when are you expecting to be up and running and operating? Partially, completely? What's your time frame?
The journey of 10,000 miles begins with a cash advance.
Of course.
Well, ultimately, we're aligning ourselves with the right institutions and the right partners to get it done. I don't have any doubt of it getting done. We're working with some of the best investment bankers in the world, working with and impact investment firms that have, family offices. They already have money. They don't have to be richer. They don't have to make an impact. COVID hits. They don't have to write any checks. They're like, I'm going to go vacation on my yacht and I'm good. But other companies and capital management companies and people that have formed the base of, putting money to work, they have to look for projects like these that find profitability and sustainability and are shovel ready and have the right people, have the right vision. And ultimately, that's what we do. And our recent sustainable development goals kind of almost put an exclamation mark on it because we just got that finished a couple of weeks ago. Got that out to some of our people, and they're like, "Oh my God, what? How can it keep getting better?"
I know, trust me, and I'm not the only one that says that. Anybody that I've talked to about any of your projects, it's jaw dropping. For me, what I find more often than not, though, is not educating about. It's really even an introduction that there's something else possible. Right. Mm-hmm. And then once they grasp that, so it's a longer process. It's not just, hey, look, I can grow hemp and make shirts. It's, hey, I can do this. And there's something else out there besides what we've been told. Right. Mm-hmm. And everybody that I talk to and every call that I get on when I say, what is it that we need to really move the industry forward? And it is the capital injection with the facilities, because how can we expect our rural areas or our farmers to continue to grow and lose everything they have? Mm-hmm. Some of these farmers, and without the infrastructure around the banking and the insurance and the common things that you would expect to have going into any other commodity, there's too much risk for our farmers, right? And so I feel like now we're at this, it really is this holdup of, I know there's a lot of money out there. I know there's a lot of money coming into the industry, especially now that the first rush has kind of come on. But this is my shout out to get involved and educate yourself about opportunities like what Tyler has, because it's not an if, it's a in, right? And it's not a want, it's a need. It's not, oh, well, it might affect my kids. No, it's in our lifetime. This is our lifetime. And, one thing for me that was really eye-opening that I really kind of appreciate is this COVID and shutdown has uncovered all of the corrupt in our supply chains and in our need for this circular community, right? Is that what you called it? Community?
Yeah, circular economy. But ultimately, you're right. Yeah, exactly. It's all. But what I found interesting in my background in hedge funds is the medium to long-term trend following. huge money in the commodity space from, medium to long-term trend following, commodity trading advisors, commodity pool operators. But the time frames for opportunity started getting smaller and smaller. So you start having more high frequency algo oriented trading. Hemp is a commodity.
Oh yeah.
And it's going to be an industrial commodity. So it's going to have those same outputs of futures contracts and things like that. But if you think about it, think about oil, an oil well. You have an oil well that'll last, 5-10 years or something, but it creates, petroleum or some natural gas or a blend. And those outputs create plastic. The investors, they get, a huge write-off on their taxes called direct participation program. So they get tons of money going towards these oil wells. Well, you look at our high density bio facilities, these things can go for 40, 50, 60 years. And we can create 150% more output than what petroleum can create because we have fiber strength. So cellulosic microfibers that you can create all your garments and materials from that are earth friendly, that won't clog the landfills. So think about an investment that creates biomaterials for 50 years. That's an exciting space when you're thinking commodities.
Right.
And the Midwest, that infrastructure is all about the commodity wealth of America was generated out of the Midwest. That's why Chicago Mercantile Exchange and CBOE, they built around that. Everyone in New England, the Northeast, are like, looking for the hot stock IPO unicorn. Mm-hmm. But everyone in the Midwest was all very commodity oriented people. And so there's now going to be a shift, a grand shift. And the people that participate now get a high yield, just like the people that participated in, interesting, exciting technologies that took off.
In phones, when the phone service or when internet started out.
Yeah, exactly. So
big.
Right now we have a great bond that does has a 12% coupon, but our next rounds, that's a municipal tax-free bond that's going to be like, 3, 4, 5, 6%, cost of money. That's very low when we have a internal rate of return of like 48 to 49% on a long-term basis, right. Not including any of the, exotic oils that can come off, and our carbon credits. Right. And ethanol and all of those things. We really have something that can create opportunities for generations to come.
Oh yeah. Well, I would love to dive in more to the carbon credits. It's something that I've become passionate about also. I really want to create a package so that our farmers understand what's needed as far as fiber. Utah is a smaller market, right? We're going to need a facility close by. We're not going to have volume like the Midwest does, and we're going to produce one crop, maybe two. We're not growing a lot outdoors, right? Unless we have a facility where everything's growing inside. But the carbon credits and understanding the difference and what it does. Can you talk a little bit about?
Well, 46% of a plant is carbon credit. And so we broke it down to the per plant and then expanded it off because we've got millions of plants, and it's 24/7 processing. So we're growing and processing all right now. We're not waiting the 90 days to get the crop out of the ground and see how it was, and weather and soil issues and pest issues and mold issues and mites. We don't have to deal with any of those issues. So we're finding that the food and farmer grade level outputs are going to have to be more indoor, and the macrame market, the rough fibers,
right,
that'll probably stay on the outdoor, and it'll be a lower value.
Yeah.
So there's going to be a market for both. But ultimately, being more of an infrastructure play, Gravitas kind of sees. Funny thing about the carbon credits is it's like a frequent flyer mile. Like what is it? What do you get when you have a carbon credit? You're like, what do I do with it? How do I make? Do I make money? Ultimately, there's some solutions that are happening right now that are interesting, because you have large companies committing to carbon neutrality, and they have to offset their carbon footprint with carbon credits. And so there you have the producers of a carbon credit, the originators of a carbon credit, which Gravitas is the unicorn of origination of carbon credits at mass scale. And then you have the consumers that need to offset their carbon footprint. Airlines, committing to carbon neutrality. How are you going to have an airline that has carbon neutrality when you're burning off jet fuel every day?
Right.
So a lot of them are saying, "Oh, we're going to grow a bunch of trees to offset it." Oh, that doesn't really. That's a year, 1 year, 2 years. But from a real solution standpoint, they're going to need like an industrial solution, not a pasture to grow trees on.
Just on carbon credits alone.
Yeah.
And you're able to create solutions.
Yeah. And there's a tax filing. I think it's called a Q45. My CFO would be way more interested to share all the Q45 stuff. But that's the tax credit component of what you look for your tax credits for carbon.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting to me. So definitely, again, back to this, COVID has brought out a time of innovation, right? And it's a time to make change. How do people get in touch with you, Tyler, if they want to connect, or if they have questions about the opportunity that you guys have for investment, or
the best way, just gravitasinfinitum.com. You can.
Yeah.
What'd you say?
I'm going to share it for you.
Oh, great. Thank you. And you can find me on LinkedIn as well. I've been doing a campaign of education, and that's been very helpful, and connecting with some of the thought leaders in the sustainability space, because a lot of the people in the sustainability space weren't thinking about hemp either, at all. We really don't even mention much about hemp in our stuff, because it was almost like a dirty word. Everyone wanted to make money with cannabis and THC, making waxes and super high THC gets you whacked out, whatever. Well, that's a market, but we're talking in institutional banking relationships and being able to supply like Amazon with sustainable packaging, and things like that. So it's a different application for what we're doing, but ultimately, since we have all the oils and we're breaking it down at a molecular level, there's a high bioavailability of our oil outputs. So when we have our output of CBD, we're going to be able to provide it at the highest quality and the lowest price, and we'll be able to drive that price down and down, basically to what you see is like vegetable oil in the market.
Right.
So people that are kind of holding their hat on, high CBD prices, it's I'm sorry to say, you're gonna have to make some adjustments to your long-term business plan, because industrial scale big ag is gonna be able to just drive those prices down. You could be buying, vegetable oil in your grocery store.
And with technology that already exists, you're able to pick it apart. And this is how I envision it. And I've said this for about a year now. We're going to get companies, and this is happening in textiles and construction and everywhere else. So why wouldn't it in food? You're going to get companies like Coca-Cola or Pepsi, and they're going to come in and say, I want this specific product. And can you provide this product every time for the next 20 years?
Yeah,
If you
consistency,
can, I'll buy
genetic consistency. Part of our high density bio facilities are, automated cloning. So that, we'll be able to sell off seedlings to farmers at very competitive prices. You don't want to necessarily be shipping seedlings off too far, but transportation costs. But we'll be able to sell, distribute very, very high quality genetic plantlings to the farmers, and that's an output of one of our profit centers. And then the rest is going to be grown in-house in our high density biofactories. Right. And that'll be a 30-day turnaround on a plant going from, a plantling to 10-pound, 6-foot plant with, 46% of that being a carbon credit. And then we don't have to dry it. It can be processed into the 3 buckets, homogenized into essentially a hemp soup processed with water. So there's no solvents, there's no high temperatures. In fact, we actually cool things down at the end to preserve some of the flavonoids that have a low evaporation.
Yep.
Those are quite valuable. So we don't put those into our metrics either for underwriting, because the underwriting is ridiculous, to show the value of those outputs. But even if we drive those down, those costs, those prices down, we're not facing the consumer. We're facing other businesses, and we are going to be providing them the raw materials to make their end products to face customers. So we're an industrial solution. We're not taking customers away from retail. We're going to be supplying retail.
I've been saying this for, like I said, the last year. I can't tell you how many times I walked into somebody that had a technology. So this group that I was working with had a technology that came from another industry that was hemp soup, I guess you could call it. We didn't know what to call it. We didn't know if we called it resin or if it was crude. It was wet extraction, so you didn't have to dry. But the thing I learned from every physician I talked to and anybody at any of the events I went to was the interest in those first compounds that are lost due to the heat, right, or the high pressure, and keeping it at ambient temperature, the ability with the antimicrobials and the all the same compounds that are used for rubbers and plastics and
the resins. We have a chart of hemp feedstock and all the outputs that it can create, and there's a similar chart to petroleum and all the outputs it creates. Essentially, we have the same chart exactly of petroleum, but we have about 50% more application because of the fiber strength within at a molecular level, but also at even like decortication and the rough fibers. The fiber strength is quite high there. There's a lot of applications, but at the molecular level, we have some phenomenal outputs, resins, and other binding agents that can be used, either lubricants, binders. So some phenomenal opportunities in the future for disrupting the current industry and how we see things and how things are made right now.
That's awesome. So moving forward, where do you see yourself, I guess, in the next, when do you anticipate expansion? And I know money is an issue, right? But say money is not, where will be your next move? Obviously,
we have. I've had kind of a. I've been kind of international my whole life, almost 50 countries. Lived, traveled, studied. I love Naples, but I see from the standpoint of the growth and the trajectory of what we're going to do with Gravitas as a solution that can scale. One thing is good with our investment banking partner is that they could see this as a green bond or some sort of high yield tax-free bond that would be a series of bonds. So for them, this could be going across the whole country to provide solutions, far beyond Florida and far beyond even the United States. Our campus model could be replicated around the world, providing jobs and sustainable materials, filtering, water and creating even potable water, which is a big problem with the desertification of a lot of the areas of the planet. You can drop these things in, and we don't have to use a bunch of crappy water. We can circular, create, use the water that's there. And Florida has a lot of water runoff, a watershed. But
right.
If you're in an area where there's not a lot of water, all you have to do is just maintain the nutrients of it as a hydroponic environment. But there's some bioremediation component of hemp in a hydroponic environment that is hugely valuable to places that have really over nutrient water running off into our waterways. So you have Lake Okeechobee and two rivers shooting off, and it creates these algae blooms and these fish kills. And when you have $1 trillion economy that gets cut off at the knees, when you can't go to the beach and stay in your multi-million-dollar rental or home that you just bought, you end up finding yourself, we end up finding yourself thinking, wait, maybe Florida isn't the best idea. So they need to have solutions that, deal with high water runoff areas that are from agricultural runoff. But for places that don't have a lot of water, this actually, is a really phenomenal use of water in these facilities.
Okay, so I noticed something the other day on your LinkedIn, which I'm stoked to hear LinkedIn's working so well for you, because it really has been a platform just like a ton of interest, and it's been pretty powerful. But I will validate the word hemp sometimes has a bad, immediately people are like, oh no, I'm not interested. Wait, but you're interested in economic impact and sustainable opportunities, and they don't want to hear it if it says hemp.
We just say biomaterials.
Yeah, perfect. Now I forgot what I was going to ask. Oh, indigenous people. Tell me how you guys are working, because as you talk about the water, it's such a fight for our tribes to keep water rights and for them to be able to have access. What are you guys doing to integrate? I saw some that you are partnering or have incorporated or created a program.
Well, we have, we're actually just reaching out to a lot of organizations that have impact in a lot of different directions. From the standpoint of it's really land use. You can't just go in and say, we're going to, create an industrial, provide an industrial solution with a crop that's grown on the ground. There's an organization, they produced another video on Netflix, Kiss the Ground, where you have multiple things going on land, and it's not just monocropping. You've got animals, you've got all these different crops being used. You've got to figure that out. And so we're, from a use of land standpoint, I think one of our high density biofactories is the equivalent of like 20,000 acres.
Oh, wow. Wow. Okay. So it very compact. You can do way more, obviously, right?
And it's a much more efficient use of land. So you see the indigenous people in like Brazil, they're just making room for cows, to pasture. And they're just chopping down all the rainforests. So I think, from a use of land standpoint, to create, foods, ultimately, if there's a nuclear winter, or when there's another nuclear winter, whether it be from an asteroid or, a missile gone awry,
volcano.
Yeah, volcano. We can convert. What this does is very efficiently grows biomass, whether it be for biomaterials or for food. And so the people that are going to be around these things are going to be very, very tied to the longevity of them. And the future of mankind has seen, and I think there's some studies to suggest that we're probably suffering from amnesia from events in the past that have caused us to kind of forget what had happened. I think when we burned down the Library of Alexandria, we lost a few thousand years of or probably even tens of thousands of years of collective knowledge around the world that was brought there. And so what we're going to have is these campuses and these buildings being able to support life.
I love it. Well, I want to get more involved. I'd love to have you guys involved with the association. For those of you that are listening, or if anybody has questions, please don't hesitate to reach out or join our association. Go to globalhempassociations.org and it'll give you any information, way to contact us. But yeah, Tyler, I'd love to have you involved, and I'd love to have you educate. I'd love to participate in some of this education, get some of this information out, because I know this is a solution. I know that it's, people always say, well, why hemp? And it's not, I went from like knowing up here to I know. Well,
look at a field of growing mature hemp plants. It's the most beautiful thing in the world. And you can be like, oh my God, that's gorgeous. It's like a cellular memory in your head from generations ago saying, this is good.
Yeah, well, and it's so funny when you say that and people are like, oh, you're out on a hemp farm. Just go experience it. Just look, just enjoy it. It's a powerful plant and a powerful opportunity that you've come across or that you've created. And I'd love to be a part of it. And I'd love to help. I think that this is a great opportunity for collaboration, and any connections I can make for you, I definitely will. But thank you very, very much for joining us. I look forward to talking to you again soon, and keep sharing all your information, and I'll do the same.
Will do. Thank you.
Thank you. See you later.
Bye.